All right, so I guess it's appropriate that I record at least one of these meditations. And this is a threshold, actually. Let me give some context where I am. This is maybe this will be a good vantage point to record it. This is the porch of the original Greek revival home that was purchased by a gentleman with the last name of Drew, and it was the purchase for the founding of a college, the Methodist seminary here in Madison, New Jersey. So I'm in the campus of Drew University, and very quiet. It's a beautiful campus, and this is kind of my campus away from campus, home away from home. So when I come to New Jersey during the week, when I am teaching at Hofstra, fly down to Portland, fly from Portland to New York, Kennedy's Airport, JFK, take the trains and then the bus to Hofstra. But in the afternoon, I come to New Jersey, and on the day in between, threshold day, so to speak, Wednesdays, I come to this university, Drew University, and study here on the campus. And in fact, I study right up there in the library. And that's an excellent library, great space, it's a wonderful campus. Very fortunate. It's very close to my 29 Sunset Drive, which is my Casa Duarte here in New Jersey, where I stay. And this is the last full week I'll be here for the academic year 2013-2014 before 4 months in my home state of Maine. And so appropriately, I'm reading this meditation that was written on the 28th day of April 2004, on this day, the 28th of April 2014, and it's appropriate because it's the transition day from the allegory of the cave to Plato's Heraclitus. And I'm just going to adjust the sound so that I can get maximum microphone, because I'm speaking somewhat in low terms because I don't want to disrupt the quiet here on campus. Okay, so yesterday's meditation from the 27th of April concluded with a memory of Socrates and the doctrine he learned from Diotima, and I said that we can with some confidence call this relationship one of friendship and characterize the exchange as an expression of what we might call the philosophy of love. The sage retains a steadfast openness to the fact that the one who initially appeared unprepared always retains the possibility of being provoked by evocative speech. The sage remains ready for this moment, and in his repose, his dignified calm is always already anticipating the moment, and in his repose, his dignified calm is already anticipating the moment when his bearing will provoke and confound the expectations of those he visits or those who call upon him. This waiting is one side of the sage's dwelling. We identify this dwelling as existence, as the bearing of freedom, as letting be, as steadfast openness. The dwelling of the sage is depicted in a story about Heraclitus, handed down from Aristotle and retold by Heidegger at the conclusion of his Letter on Humanism. The story revolves around Heraclitus' fragment 119, Ethos Anthropoi Daimon. The familiar abode for man is the open region for the presencing of God, the unfamiliar one. unquote, from Heidegger. The story reported by Aristotle is from the De Partes Animalis, Parts of the Animals, Book 1, Section 5, or line 645a. Quote, "The story is told of something Heraclitus said to some strangers who wanted to come visit him. Having arrived, they saw him warming himself at a stove. Surprised, they stood there in consternation, above all because he encouraged them, the astounded ones, and called for them to come in, with the words, 'For here too the gods are present,'" unquote. This story is revealing on many levels and pertains importantly to our exploration of being and learning, and the modality of the sage who mediates this relation. Heraclitus stands in as the sage, for certain, but the story indicates why the dwelling of the sage is defined as the sheltering of the unfamiliar. The strangers who have come to the home of Heraclitus expected to find this wise man in the guise of wisdom, which they must certainly have conjured up as extraordinary. Instead, they encounter Heraclitus in the midst of a mundane activity, warming his hands at the stove. This most domestic scene is a portrait of the ordinary and unexciting. The strangers are confounded by Heraclitus' dwelling, which runs contrary to their expectations. They believe they should meet the thinker in circumstances which, contrary to the ordinary round of human life, everywhere bears traces of the exceptional and rare, and so of the exciting. The group hopes that in their visit to the thinker, they will find things that will provide material for entertaining conversation, at least for a while. It's a quote from Heidegger. The first and perhaps most important point we should gather from the story is the disruption of the ordinary within the mundane itself. We have said much about learning as getting underway when the apprentice is drawn away from the security of the domestic, the habitual habitat. But this story reminds us that the dwelling of the sage, the open region, should not and cannot be limited to a specific place, if we mean by this a predetermined, designated destination. This is precisely the kind of expectation held by Heraclitus' visitors. They anticipated Heraclitus' abode to be in a certain state, to exist in a specific manner, as the space of the wise person. This turned out to be the case, but not in the way they had anticipated. The dwelling of the sage is a topos, a location, defined by a horos, limit or boundary. But this dwelling is not a building or an area of land used for a specific purpose. The story emphasizes the sage's dwelling place as a modality, or a specific manner of being, a position occupied by the sage. Heraclitus dwells as the sage in the ordinary confines of his home, engaged in the unexciting activity of warming his hands. The point is that the open region is an abode, a shelter or specific region that appears with the bearing of the sage. The sage stands upon this open region, the unstable ground upon which paths of learning are broken. But this path-breaking activity can and must appear within, and as a disruption of the mundane, the ordinary. When learning gets underway, it disrupts the ordinary activities of everyday life. The story shows us, however, that this disruption can and will happen in the midst of the routine, the everyday, the apparently mundane and unexciting. The strangers had hoped to step outside of the everyday, and much to their surprise encountered the mundane. But their encounter with the mundane produced the very experience they had anticipated. They were surprised and stood there in consternation. Consternation denotes, quote, surprise and anxiety, great dismay, unquote. It is the very state we have identified as the provocation, irritation, that emerges from the reception of evocative speech. Heraclitus is dwelling as the sage. Within the domestic communicates evocative. This saying culminates with the invitation, quote, for here too the gods are present. And that's the end of the meditation from this day, the 28th of April, written 10 years ago today, in 2004. That's the transition, the key transition to, quite frankly, I recall it because I can feel it, one of my favorite sections of this project, because I just have a deep affinity for Heraclitus. And in fact, I hope to teach Heraclitus, or at least speak about him, in the fall in the Honors College, in the course that I'm co-teaching, Culture and Expression. So I'm going to spend some time on the upcoming week, if not weeks, on this story from Aristotle. And that was shown to me by Heidegger at the end of his letter on humanism. And I just want to make one comment, which is the translation of the key fragment from Heraclitus, fragment 119. The Greek is ethos anthropoi daimon. And Heidegger's translation is, the familiar abode for man is the open region for the presencing of God, the unfamiliar one. Now, ethos designates the sort of animating spirit of a person. And so ethos anthropoi daimon, I think it means that who you are is the way in which your spirit animates. So and I'm confessing that I'm completely illiterate when it comes to Attic Greek, but from knowing the philosophical words, it seems like it's saying that who we are is an animation of a particular spirit, our daimon. Now the daimon is interesting because the daimon, from what I understand, is something akin to our sort of like what we would consider to be our guardian angel or something. It's the spirit that sort of watches over us. I mean, this concept evolved to something like our conscience. And so ethos as animation of our conscience, it's really saying who we are is always expressed in some way, our being, our way of being. And so I find this particularly helpful for talking about the animating spirit of the sage as the philosophical educator, right? And so what is it that they animate? Well, they animate an invitation to learning, an openness to learning. And so what they are offering first and foremost, and what Heraclitus is really, I think, offers me, is this bearing of the sage as sort of radically hospitable, welcoming spirit. Right? So what the sage does is sort of opens up the space for the students or the apprentices to emerge within. So they're the cultivator and curator of the space for the emergence of learning, which is, as I said, an enactment of human freedom.
So I think I'll leave it at that on this sunny, finally warm day here on the campus at Junior University in Madison, New Jersey.